Bitcoin chain tracker data shows Ether withdrawals crossed 1 million tokens, even as prices touched an 11-month high. And that's following the successful Shanghai upgrade. So joining us to discuss is a Galaxy Digital Vice President of Research and I must say, a CoinDesk alum, Christine Kim. Hi, Christine. Great to see you again.
Hi. Hi, Michael. Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure, of course. So why don't you just give us a recap of what we've just gone through at Ethereum? We're calling it the Shapella. That's the portmanteau of Shanghai and Capella, two major Ethereum network upgrades that occurred simultaneously on April 12th. How did it all play out in your mind?
I think it played out really well. So like you mentioned, the main point of the upgrade was to enable staked ETH withdrawals. And since the upgrade was activated last Wednesday, I think it is, last Wednesday, we've seen over 1 million ETH withdrawn, distributed across validators. There were a couple of bugs in clients that did impact the performance of certain validators, but the impact of that was really small, and the fixes for those clients were released pretty quickly after the bugs were discovered. So overall, I would say the upgrade went really well, and we're already starting to see lots of validators get access to their staked ETH for the first time ever.
However, according to Reddit Networks Explorer, with all the requests that have come in, there's now a 2-week wait to get the tokens out. So why does it take so long? What's the logjam there?
Yeah, so the queue that we're talking about that will take a couple weeks to clear out are full withdrawals. These are validators that are exiting the network. The majority of withdrawals, so the majority of 1 million that we're talking about, are actually partial withdrawals, and those happen every about 100 hours. So there's no wait to get access to your rewards as a validator. Beacon chain issuance since the launch of the Beacon chain, getting access to those and having those become liquid is a pretty quick process. But the queue, which is the exit queue, which is for full withdrawals and for validators that are unstaking their full principal balance of 32 ETH, that takes longer. And it's partially to ensure that the network remains secure through fluctuations in the number of active validators. So as a proof of stake blockchain, really what's securing the network is stake. And you don't want to allow large volatility in how much stake is on the network. So you kind of like enforce this weighting mechanism so that the network has times to adjust their monetary policy, adjust their rewards, to re-incentivize people to stake their ETH back into the network and maintain a really level amount of security for Ethereum.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good reminder of what the actual purpose of staking is, right? Instead of, and I can imagine, if too many tokens left at one time, there could be issues around decentralization. Interestingly, looking though at the price part of this, right? There was some speculation going in that a large amount of withdrawals would result in some sort of dumping of ETH and a decline in the price. But of course, it's done the opposite. It's done quite well. Has there been any impact though in terms of a rising price in enticing people to withdraw? Is there any sort of connection with the way the market's behaved and what we've seen in terms of withdrawal requests?
So the number of deposits have actually increased since Shanghai as well. So of course, the number of withdrawals far outpaces the number of deposits, but there has been an increased interest in staking. And I think that's actually because a lot of the people that are unstaking right now, or at least some portion of them, are unstaking their validators and restaking it back into the network through a different service provider. So for example, if you are staking your 32 ETH with Kraken, I would imagine, and you still wanted to stake your ETH, you could withdraw that ETH from Kraken and restake it through a staking service provider such as Lido or Rocket Pool. So I think that's one part of it, like why we're seeing more people depositing and why deposit activity is also increased. But I also think another part to your question around, does the higher price of Ethereum encourage people to withdraw or encourage people to deposit? I think one of the reasons why the price of ETH is really going up is because this really completes Ethereum's merge. This really completes Ethereum as a proof of stake blockchain. And so I think the price reflects, the robustness and the resiliency of this new feature being added to Ethereum. And I would imagine that it also de-risks staking as an activity on Ethereum. So you could see more people who had been holding back from staking now stake on Ethereum because Shanghai is complete.
Yeah, I mean, some people have been talking for some time now about the degree to which this successful unstaking measure happens, that it may boost this sort of rolling idea that ETH becomes an institutional play, that there's this idea that institutions might start to look upon staking as a kind of an alternative to fixed income. Are we seeing that narrative emerge? I mean, what level of interest are we seeing from institutional investors in this space in the light of these changes?
That's a great question. I've been getting that question a lot as well. I would say so far, pre-merge, or not pre-merge, but pre-Shanghai, post-Shanghai, I haven't seen a huge increase in the amount of institutional staking activity on Ethereum. And by institutional staking activity, I'm looking at the activity on staking services that are geared towards institutions. So the Liquid Staking Collective that issues the Liquid Staking ETH token, LSETH, is one of the barometers that I look for in terms of interest in institutional staking activity. And I also look at the release of features and products that are specifically geared towards institutions by major staking protocols like Lido and Rocket Pool. And I haven't seen a ton on that front in terms of like institutional focused staking products and increased activity in the few that there are in this space. And I think partially the reason why is because we haven't seen a ton of regulatory clarity around the activity of staking. We've seen enforcement actions against crypto exchange Kraken around their staking as a service program. And I think there's still a lot of questions around the taxation of staking rewards as well. So I would imagine that until we get more regulatory clarity on these matters, institutional staking might continue to be depressed.
We have a prominent regulator joining us in the show later on, so we'll put some of those questions to her when we do. So you had some other elements in your report there, looking at some metrics there. I mean, what else jumped out at you that you thought was important from the way that this played out?
Yeah. Well, in terms of metrics, let's see. Oh, I think one of the interesting things was around the withdrawal credential changes. So as I was talking about, the majority of 1 million ETH is partial withdrawals. They're just withdrawals, automatic withdrawals of your rewards. As a beacon chain validator, you might have accrued 2 ETH, you might have accrued 3, depending on when you entered into the network in rewards. And those automatically become liquid every, say, 100 hours. And that's considered a withdrawal. Unfortunately, the majority of validators didn't have the appropriate withdrawal credentials. Basically, they didn't specify an Ethereum 1 account, an Ethereum 1 address to which those rewards could be deposited to. So at the time of the upgrade, the network saw something around 40,000 messages just flood the network in withdrawal request changes. And in the first wave of withdrawals that we saw, it looked a little bit smaller than I had anticipated, but that was because most of the validators were still updating their withdrawal credentials. And so after about the 100-hour marks and after we saw more validators change their withdrawal credentials, we saw the amount of ETH being withdrawn in partial rewards just spike because by that time, we had so many more validators that were able to actually withdraw their ETH. So I thought a really interesting metric to track was how quickly did validators actually update their withdrawal credentials, and how did that impact the amount of ETH being withdrawn? And we saw actually a big spike about 2 to 3 days after Shanghai because of this activity.
I'm smirking because it sounds a little bit like the challenges that people have, getting all the numbers and data correct when they're making a bank wire transfer request, right? It's almost as if similar sorts of barriers to moving money around exist even in this blockchain environment. All right, well, thank you so much, Galaxy Digital Vice President of Research, Christine Kim. It was a pleasure to have you on the show.